I am asking you to do everything you possibly can to share this class today, because we are being garbled by some of the things that we're saying in the classroom. It's actually like blatant now. It actually says it on my personal page that I'm being restricted. So I need your help. I need for you to start texting, tagging, share this video once it goes live, which is already live on Facebook and YouTube. And it'll also be live at whenyouneedafriend.com. I'm going to start the record button because we started a little late today. So you'll find out what we're going to be doing in a few. Hold on a second. Today's teacher, we are going to learn about men's hormones. So fasten your seatbelts, and it is time to dance just so that you can get in the moment. Here we go.
The Lily and McDermott Show.
We love, we fear, bridges we burn, we make mistakes, then we live and learn. When life gets tough, and it seems like your best ain't good enough. If you're in need of hope, you know where I'll be. I'll be right here, right here. And when you need a friend, you can count on me. I'll be right here, waiting for you.
This is the place you can always turn to when you need a friend. The Lily and McDermott Show. To reach out to Lillian, visit her on the web at whenyouneedafriend.com. Now let's all learn together. Here's Lillian McDermott.
Hello, my listening and viewing friend. It's so nice we can meet each other on the air on this beautiful, best day ever. And for those of you who are tuning into the classroom for the first time, please know I've been waiting for you. This is a safe place where you can go to when you need a friend. It is my commitment to provide natural ways to heal, and it is my mission to make awareness, responsibility, and truth a part of our everyday life. And I hope you, my listening and viewing friend, will feel empowered to embrace inner truth and live the life of your dreams. Now, today, we are going to be talking about a topic that we're normally, as women, pushing our men to get with and to learn about. And so if you have a special man in your life, and even you as a woman, you need to know this information too. Share this video because it's going to help all of us. It's going to help all of us learn more about what affects our hormones. But today we're going to focus on our men just right after Father's Day and future Father's Day. For some people, we're going to be talking about with Dr. Sam Madeira, ND, natural ways, what could be causing some of the effects of a hormonal imbalance? Could there be environmental issues that are happening in your life, in your body, that need to be addressed? And so today we're going to talk about all these things and more. And since it is our sole purpose in life to give and receive love and knowledge, I am grateful that Dr. Sam Madeira is here to do just that. Welcome, Dr. Madeira, to the classroom.
Thanks for having me on your show. Yeah, I'm looking forward to chatting about this today with you.
Yes. And so share a little bit about your background and what led you to becoming a naturopathic doctor.
Sure. I grew up in northern New England, so Vermont, New Hampshire. And for people who don't know where that is, 3 hours north of Boston. And just was playing in the woods a lot and had a lot of exposure to ticks and Lyme disease. So I had a lot of fatigue in my teens growing up, and was very active before that and playing lots of sports. And then all of a sudden was not able to do a lot of things that I like to do. So once I found out it was related to Lyme disease and Lyme co-infections, found the right practitioners to help me kind of resolve that and get my energy back. And that was kind of in the process of me going through undergraduate studies and studying herbal medicine and psychology and holistic health and massage therapy, etc. And then getting a doctorate in naturopathic medicine, and finding jobs where I was focusing on men's hormones and men's health, and working with those clients here in the greater Seattle area. So that's kind of where landed me in men's hormones and men's health, and finding that while there's men who are in their 20s and early 30s that have less testosterone than some men in their 70s. And I think a lot of people think about this kind of issue being, younger people would never have that problem. So I like to share with audiences like yours, what the root causes are, what I've discovered as a practitioner doing this for a decade and more, what they can ask their physicians about, or what they can look for in trying to resolve this for themselves, because sometimes it's just not, let's give a medication. So
very good. So there is one of the things that we want to talk about is the environment and what can cause this. So let's just start with what are some of the environmental products or products in our life that, or situations in our life that could be bringing our hormones, and especially men, because we're going to focus more on men, but does this translate to women too?
Yes, absolutely. Women's hormones are potentially, or can be, a little bit more complex. A lot of women who are in childbearing years have estrogen dominance, so they can have too much estrogen, or they have enough estrogen, but they have next to zero progesterone. So then they present as if they have estrogen dominance. For women need testosterone too, and a lot of younger women, in their 30s and early 40s, who have not gone through menopause yet and not postmenopausal, actually need testosterone. And this is, or testosterone therapy or herbal medicines to optimize their testosterone before going through menopause. So it's definitely the toxin aspect is for all of us. I mean, it starts in utero. So when you're in your mom's belly and right before being born, you're exposed to all the toxins that your mother's been exposed to. So this is preconception for our whole lives, decreasing how these toxins are affecting us. And I can offer books and things for people to look at for resources as we discuss it more.
Okay. And with men,
yes,
you are still connected to your mother, so I'm sure that with men, little
absolutely.
boys, that would be the same thing.
Yeah, all of us. Yeah. So for boys being in utero, what we're seeing with the toxic exposures is there's decrease in a measurement which they use in research called, basically it's the measurement between the genitalia and your butt, basically, and that length is shortening for boys, for baby boys, and it's supposed to be longer in baby boys and shorter in baby girls. They're becoming a little bit more feminized by these estrogenic and toxic compounds in the environment, and that starts in utero. So that's why we have men who are 80 or 70 or 65 that can potentially have more testosterone in their blood when you check their blood in the morning, or other things like urine in the morning, versus what 20-something-year-old or 17-year-old boys have in their morning urine or their blood sample. So that would be shocking, I think, to most listeners or most people today. They would think, oh, well, if you're 50 plus years old, or definitely if you're 70 years old, you're going to have very low testosterone. Well, that person was not exposed to the same amount of toxic burden for the first 2 decades of their life and in utero that the 20-something-year-old was exposed to. And then there's other aspects of this too. So, I mean, we can talk about, I don't know how detailed you want to get, but we can talk about specific things being, summer, the first week of real summertime, technically. Sunscreen is one of the most toxic things that people put on their skin. And that's estrogenic. That decreases your testosterone. That affects your hormones as a man, as a woman, as a baby. And I see people at the beach, at lakes, at rivers, just hosing themselves down from, closing their eyes and just spraying themselves with this stuff because we've become sun phobic. And I think, yes, you don't want to get blistered and severely burned in the sunlight, however, we get a lot of benefit from the sun beyond vitamin D. There's a lot of other things that happen when you get in the sunlight and you get enough sun. And a lot of sunscreens are very toxic. So you want to figure out how to not get burned, but also protect yourself and your family. So there's resources that I can discuss for that whenever you want me to.
Yeah. When it comes to sunscreens, there are certain chemicals that cause problems. What are some of those chemicals that cause? Because I know that in Hawaii, they don't allow some of the chemicals that they allow here in the United States because it's killing the reefs. Because if it's killing their reefs, what is it doing to us? So what are some of those chemicals that people need to look at right now on their sunscreen?
Yeah, so what I would suggest is going to environmentalworkinggroup.org and looking in the Skin Deep database, and they have articles about what specific chemicals to look for. I don't remember the exact name of the 2 to 3 chemicals that you articles in there, and it's ewg.org. So ewg.org. And then you just put in Skin Deep database, or you can put EWG Skin Deep database into your search engine and it'll show right up. And then you're going to click on that. And you also can download an app on your smartphone, which is called the Cleaner Living app by Environmental Working Group, EWG. And then you can scan the barcode of your sunscreens. Basically, what most people need for a sunscreen, I mean, even lotion has about 5 SPF roughly. So even if you just put a little bit of, lotion on your skin, coconut oil is probably roughly 2 SPF. So a lot of things that people may have at home or are using already for skin protection. Wearing a hat, wearing a long sleeve shirt after you feel like you've had 15 to 30 minutes of sun exposure both sides is a good idea. I used to live in Arizona, and oftentimes after a certain time of day, you would just put a long sleeve, light colored shirt on and a hat because you've had enough, right? So there's ways of protecting yourself without using any sunscreens. Usually things like zinc oxide and stuff like that are great for your nose, your higher cheekbones. If you're gonna have to be out in the sun because you either work outside or you're doing recreational activities, boating, hiking, etc., outdoors, then you need to figure out ways to protect, areas that are going to be showing ears and stuff like that. So the one of the chemicals that I know that specifically is, at least the acronym is BP, is very estrogenic in sunscreens. And Dr. Anthony Jay, J-A-Y, PhD, has a book called Estrogeneration. Estrogeneration talks about a lot of the toxins in sunscreens. And one of the acronyms in sunscreens that specifically is affecting hormones is this BP, and it's in all the conventional sunscreens. So Badger Balm is a brand that has historically been safe for kids and adults, and they have these like sunscreen sticks now. So if you don't like the cream, you can just kind of, it's like a giant chapstick you put on your face and stuff like that. So I personally don't really like things on my skin. I don't like lotions. I don't like putting oils and thick things on my skin when I'm hiking or when I'm outside doing different activities, paddleboarding on a lake or something. So I tend to try to pay attention to when I know I would burn, and everybody's going to be different. Some people may never burn. Some people have obviously very dark skin tones. Other people have very light skin tones. And I think it's knowing your skin. There's also a app called D Minder, as in vitamin D. And it's essentially a way to measure how much vitamin D you can get from the sun. It tells you when solar noon is based on your zip code and your latitude and all those geographical location things. And then it will tell you, okay, your skin tone, the fact that you're wearing shorts and a t-shirt, you need to be out in the sun for this amount of time to get this amount of vitamin D. And I think a lot of people would be surprised that 1 hour is very insufficient to get enough vitamin D. And most people are not getting outside within those, 2 to 4 hours of solar noon every day, because most people are working indoors. And then even if they're working outdoors, they're covered head to toe. I used to do landscaping and yard work when I was in high school and college, and you're wearing pants because you don't want all this grass getting all over you and dirt getting all over you, and you're wearing a t-shirt. So you're mostly covered. Most people need, to be, essentially in a bathing suit. And without that app, essentially half the time it would take to burn front and back every day around solar noon. So solar noon is not always 12 o'clock noon. Sometimes, depending on where you live, it could be 1:30, it could be 11:45 roughly. And with that app, it will tell you, okay, hey, this is the time based on the time of year. So right now we're basically at the summer solstice. So at this time of year, you can be outside longer in these northern latitudes in North America and still get vitamin D after work, right? And so have that exposure. And it'll also help you figure out, okay, this is probably when I'm going to burn. So I should probably put a long sleeve shirt on or go inside, and then you may not need sunscreen.
Interesting.
Yeah. And a lot of
Interesting.
sunscreen cause cancer.
Yeah, it's the sunscreens that cause the cancer, not the
Yes.
sun.
Yes.
It's all crazy, all the things that we've been taught. But let's go back to the I kind of asked about the sunscreens and specifics on the sunscreen, but other than sunscreens, we have plastics. We have what are other things that we could maybe eliminate today from our life?
Yes. So what I recommend people do is listen to this and then go through your kitchen in your home and slowly replace things. So the first thing you can start with is anything that you would reheat food or beverages in, or put a hot food or beverage in. So get rid of all plastic Tupperware, replace it with glassware. Put your drinks in either a glass container, or there's, Hydro Flask is great for like coffee and teas. There's Clean Canteen, which is stainless steel company for water bottles. So you need a water bottle that's not plastic, and essentially get rid of all those. There's hard plastics that are okay with cold things. So you want to go to Shana Swan's website. So SHANA, last name Swan, SWAN. And she's a PhD who wrote the book Countdown. And that's also a great resource to read. It came out a couple years ago, and it's exactly about this topic. And essentially, she helps you figure out, okay, so there are some plastics that are okay, and there are some that are not. So avoiding exposure, the first thing that we all need to do is decrease exposures. So decrease, decrease, decrease. If you're still being exposed to things, it doesn't really make a big impact taking tons of supplements, or even taking something like glutathione and getting a sauna and investing in that in your time and resources, because you're still being exposed every day. The next thing is looking at things like, okay, well, BPA, BPF, BPS. So there's BPA-free plastic water bottles, but they've replaced that with BPS and BPF, and BPF is even worse for us than BPA. So I'm not
Unbelievable.
saying stick with the BPA. So what happens with toxins and the way that they're not regulated in our society and Western societies in general, specifically the United States, because that's where I live and that's what I know about. They release chemicals in the environment, and they basically allow us to be the guinea pigs until there's enough lawsuits and complaints, and then they say, okay, we will put a warning on it, but it's still there. So you have to do the due diligence for you and your family, and especially if you have health problems, if you've had cancer or you want to prevent cancer because your other elder relatives or parents or first degree relatives, siblings have had cancer. You're going to have to do more due diligence to eliminate these chemicals from both your environments, your body, and your exposure as much as possible. So BPA is a big one. It gets a lot of press, but people don't know about BPF and BPS often unless they've done more digging.
Yeah. In fact, they changed the day they said, okay, we're going to eliminate this, or we're going to make known that BPA free, it's BPA free, that you don't have to worry about BPA. That same time frame, they changed the name to BPS and BPF. And so it's like we think that the government is here to protect us, but the reality is we're so far from that. Anyone who believes that at this point today, after the last 2 years, that the government is here to protect us, then I have waterfront property in the Sahara Desert I would love to sell, because it is, they'll buy anything. If you can buy that now, you'll buy anything. Okay, so with that in mind, we're looking at plastics, we're looking at sunscreens. Is there anything else that is really easy to eliminate at this time?
Yeah, so I mean, those are the big things.
Okay.
Not getting a receipt, getting an electronic receipt. I mean, I would look at the toxins that they talk about in those two books. One of the other biggest thing besides plastics is toxins in our water. So you want to filter your water appropriately. You can go on the Environmental Working Group's website and you can look at your water through just putting in your zip code. And I think most people would be surprised. Anywhere someone lives, there's going to be some toxins allowed in your water above a limit that you would want them for, that are either carcinogen or hormone disrupting, or both. And a lot of things that are carcinogenic are already hormone disrupting. So you can just kind of, if it says carcinogenic, most likely it's screwing with your gut and your hormones. You don't want fluoride in your water. You don't want fluorinated toothpaste. Fluoride disrupts the pineal gland. It disrupts testosterone. So these are toxins. I mean, there are certain medications. So, I mean, we don't have time to get into every little minutia, but basically eliminating these things from your drinking water and your toothpaste, buying non-fluorinated toothpaste that has other great things in it. There's different like herbs and things like that that are really great that we've been chewing on, different toothbrush like things before we had toothpaste as a species of human. So there's a lot of things that you can kind of do that aren't going to look that different. It's still toothpaste. It just doesn't have fluoride. Look at your mouthwash, the things that you use every day. So you want to look at these things, your coffee machine. So if you're making coffee in a Keurig machine, you need to get rid of that Keurig machine, because you're exposed to all kinds of plastics. And even your coffee and tea, make sure that's organic. So the way that I think about it, if you're exposed to something every single day, then that's something to change. If this is something that someone's traveling across the US and they need to drink water out of a plastic water bottle one time, probably not gonna be the biggest deal in the world. But we still live in this world, so do the best you can and make it small steps. So start with your kitchen, start with your coffee, tea.
I like that. Okay, so we just covered this, just in case you had a few minutes to listen, what you can eliminate from your diet or your life to kind of like start cleaning out those toxins. And so, but the history of hormones, like I know a doctor here in Brevard County in Florida, I live in Florida, that says that your men's testosterone should be at 1100, 1200 at all phases of your life. That's what it was when you were younger, and it's supposed to be that high now. And there's a lot of controversy with that. There's also people that say you don't need a lot of testosterone and that it'll eventually go down because that's the way your body slows you down as you get older. There's a lot of controversy with that one too. But it wasn't the same back in the 70s, testosterone, with today. Can you share a history of what's happened to testosterone in men?
Absolutely. So there are these large studies called NHANES studies. And NHANES is like this national studies. So you can look up NHANES online. You can go into PubMed and put in like NHANES testosterone study.
How do you spell that?
NHANES. And they've done these population studies with, 10,000, roughly 12,000 men from typically they're age 19 roughly to 70, give or take some years. And what they do is they measure their testosterone. Let's say they did one that ended, I believe, in 2011. And they measured their testosterone every year from the late 90s until 2011. And they showed about a 20% decrease, at least in their total testosterone from those 13 years. And so every decade we're seeing a 20% or more drop. What we've seen since 1970, 1980 is about a 40 to 50% drop in the amount of testosterone that people are making at any age. So there's first of all a myth that andropause, or the ability of us men to make testosterone, happens only around age 50, like menopause. Quote unquote, andropause can happen at any age, and there's many different things that cause it. It's not just age, it's not just toxins. We're talking about toxins today because that's the most probably prolific cause, barring someone having a trauma to the testes. They have had a huge, massive impact fall that they hit their head or their testes, and that's caused hypogonadism. Are toxins. So toxins are the main thing that are causing 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, 20-something-year-olds to have low testosterone. The idea that we should all have very high testosterone is that 20-something-year-olds used to have about a 1,200 total testosterone nanograms per deciliter. For me, it's a range. I basically say optimal is at least ideally 700-ish to about 1,250 total testosterone, ideally around 30 nanograms per deciliter for free testosterone, which would be 300 picograms per milliliter if you're measuring with picograms for free testosterone. So nobody is at that. Nobody is at that I see is at 300 picograms per milliliter or 30 nanograms per deciliter free testosterone, which is arguably more important than total testosterone because that's what your body is able to use. Should everybody have 1,000 plus total testosterone? Well, it really depends on the person. It depends on their symptoms. It depends on their goals. If I have someone sitting in front of me and they say, you know what, I have no libido. I haven't had sex with my wife for 2 years. I'm depressed. I have low motivation. I've been prescribed antidepressants. I've been prescribed Viagra and other similar medications, and I don't get morning erections, and I'm kind of miserable, and my testosterone's 400. I'm going to say, well, let's see how you feel when your testosterone's 800, and let's see if we can reverse all those symptoms. Should they be 1,200? I have some guys that if they get up to 1,200, they're like, I don't really feel any different, and I actually feel worse. Because everybody has genetics for androgen receptors, AR androgen receptors, that basically uptake all of their androgens. So their testosterone is one of the main androgens. There's dihydrotestosterone, which is a different type of testosterone that androgen receptors like more, and you have to convert that through an enzyme, which is also controlled by your genetics. So this idea that we all should kind of like hit this golden number. I mean, any lab test is going to be based on how that person feels and what their kind of like optimal is. There's no normal that fits all. What I say when people say, hey, I want to feel normal or I don't feel normal. Well, normal is a setting on a washing machine. There's no such thing as normal. There's your optimal as an individual. So someone may feel awesome with a total testosterone of 600, and before they came to see me, they had a total testosterone of 150. And they had sleep apnea and lots of inflammation in their body, and they needed to get all those things kind of worked on and treated. And now they and get off maybe some medications that are causing that. So yes, I mean, I actually just did a post on Instagram saying, hey, this is kind of like my guidelines for optimal testosterone, which I just told you. And there are people saying like, well, why do you think a 20-year-old and an 80-year-old should have the same testosterone? I mean, if an 80-year-old is still being active and they still have the quality of life that they want, and their testosterone's 500 or 300, I mean, that's probably they,
Okay.
they
I'm
may not
losing
be
you.
doing very well.
I'm losing
Oh.
you. When you're speaking, once in a while, there's sections that I can't hear what you said. And this was probably the biggest chunk that was very important.
Okay.
Can you repeat that again?
Yes. So how far back do you want me to go?
That you said, why should a 70-year-old and a 30 or 20-year-old have the same level of testosterone? And you were talking about a 70-year-old could have a 500 or 500 and feel, and then that's when I lost you.
Okay, yes. So essentially, there's this debate of why a 20-something-year-old and a 70-year-old will want to have the same amount of testosterone showing up in their blood tests. And basically, it comes down to quality of life. So if someone has no symptoms and they just get their testosterone checked because they're wanting to get it checked, and let's say they're 75 plus years old, and they have the quality of life they want, they're active, their sex life is not impacted drastically, and all the things that are related to low testosterone symptoms, they're not losing a lot of lean muscle mass, they're still feeling mostly healthy, and most people are not like this even in their 40s right now, just so the listeners know. Most people, 90% of North Americans are metabolically sick. So then you compare that to a 20-something-year-old, and that person has lots of symptoms and they have severely low testosterone, then we're going to want to increase their testosterone. So essentially what I'm saying is age to me doesn't really matter in this conversation. It's how the person feels,
Quality,
what quality of life they have. Most of the time men don't go to the doctor unless they're really things are bad.
yeah.
And mostly what they say is, hey, I don't feel like myself. I used to lift all this weight. I used to have a great sex life. Or, I mean, it could just be one of these symptoms. I have no motivation. That's the biggest one. I'm tired and I have no motivation. And I don't know why. Nothing that I can point to has changed. These people have changed their diets. Maybe they don't understand the toxin stuff we talked about, and that needs to be worked on first, obviously. But there's this epidemic of low testosterone in very young men who otherwise look healthy. I mean, pick any man that you see that is very muscular and very active, and without checking their testosterone, you would think, oh, that person probably has very high testosterone. You'd be surprised that most of these people have much less than 400 total testosterone, less than 15 nanograms per deciliter free testosterone. So they're all at a deficit. And especially if they've used anabolic steroids, which are different than the type of testosterone that I prescribe in their youth, in their 20s, they're going to have much lower testosterone later on in their life.
It's amazing that when you were talking about the history and how there's been a drop in testosterone. I've read on the different causes of that. One of them is all the stuff that's been happening with children, and I just want to make sure that this continues to air. And I don't know what your idea is on that, but many of these things that are happening, especially with our little kids. I heard you say in one, as I was doing my research for you on you, that I think it was the 2050 or 2030 something, that most men will be sterile. And it makes sense if you start. And so can you share a little bit about that? And can you share what happens when we fall into this normal today category, and what could be causing, what are some of the other causes that could be hurting men with low testosterone?
Yeah, so male fertility, what we call essentially the fertility issues that most men and women go to a fertility clinic or a practitioner, a holistic practitioner like myself, and I do work with couples with, we call it subfertility. Infertility is you've tried for multiple times through multiple years, and you have no fertility, like zero fertility. So subfertility is the technical term for this. And what Shayna Swan talks about in her book, and the research of her and her colleagues, shows that by 2050, roughly, there will be no fertile men on the face of the planet. So that's a huge issue. That's a very big issue. And
population control is also a huge issue. So
yes.
there we go. So this is something that's gradual. And so so share a little bit more. I just wanted to add some of these things that are happening with our children and with people too. It doesn't matter, they're getting it, whether it's the flu or other pneumonia, or a fear of other things that are not happening, that your body is equipped to handle without any of these things. So go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's so basically there's a lot of things that can cause subfertility. The toxins are a big one that we just discussed. There's other things that can be part of that, like you're discussing in the conventional medicine sphere. There's other things that can cause low testosterone. And I already mentioned some of them being concussions, so traumatic brain injury, trauma to the testes from, usually sports and things like that in our youth as young boys. If you, have ever lost consciousness or had a concussion where you had headaches afterwards or you felt dizzy afterwards, most people don't really do anything about that. But that can cause all kinds of hormone issues for all of your hormones. So you want to get those things checked out. There's other particular things with things that cause low testosterone. That can be medications, nutrient deficiencies, not enough, essential fatty acids, having a very pro-inflammatory lifestyle, having insulin resistance, diabetes, prediabetes, metabolic syndrome, being overweight. So essentially pick the average American and they're going to have all these things. Sleep apnea, sleep disturbances, other sleep issues, chronic infections. So reactivated mono, Lyme co-infections, Lyme disease, that the whole biotoxin illness sphere, mold mycotoxins. So these are things that I test for a lot in my patients, and a lot of people have mold mycotoxin exposure. There's a lot of other toxins that we're being exposed to, like herbicides and pesticides in our food, in our environment. People are spraying, it's spring, and people have been spraying their lawns with 2,4-D, broadleaf herbicide, instead of, grow a garden or at least harvest the dandelions and don't spray them, use those for medicine. They're herbal medicines. Which is foreign to most people. Most people are like, I don't want the dandelions. There's some weird kind of like psychology of everyone wanting their lawn to look like Buckingham Palace or something. So, I think we need to let go of that as times are changing into a, maybe this is silver lining of what's going on in the world right now, but people need to start growing their own food again, like we did in the 40s and the 50s and before that, where most people had a garden, even if it was just for like, hey, I have some herbs and some salad fixings. I have some tomatoes, instead of, getting it from the grocery store. And your yard is going to be where, if you have a yard, if you're blessed enough to have a yard, your yard is going to be where you're going to do that. So the herbicides are huge. So, I mean, they're carcinogenic, they're estrogenic. Roundup, glyphosate is really bad for our gut and our gut-brain axis and all of our hormones, and it's carcinogenic. So these are other causes in our world that are getting sprayed on our lawns, getting sprayed on the parks where our dogs and our kids play. And there's a huge influx of cancer every year. It's always going up, right? Heart disease and cancer, number one and number two killers of everybody in North America and the developed world. So decreasing toxins and decreasing your exposure to these things and detoxing from them is going to be how you're not only going to protect your hormones, but decrease your chance of your kids and you and your family having something like cancer, or if you've already had cancer, getting it again. I have patients who've lived or live on golf courses, probably one of the most toxic places where you can live, because they're spraying all these things. They don't even have to spray it. It's in the sprinkler water. They put their herbicides in there so that obviously they want their greens to look pristine, and they have to have a certain upkeep, right, for a golf course to look the way it does. So severely toxic place to live or spend a lot of time. If you play golf, that's awesome. You're going to probably want to do a lot of detoxification practices so that you can kind of balance that out in your body and get rid of them and flush them out the right way so that you don't have things like headaches, autoimmune disease, chronic seasonal allergies year round. That's also a sign that autoimmune disease is starting in the body. So these things are things that people normalize. They just take Zyrtec or something. It's like, oh, I have allergies every day. Well, you're at the golf course every day, So I think a lot of times it's kind of like reframing, re-educating, denormalizing chronic illness. Over 90% of us North Americans, people here in Canada and the US, and I'm very close to Canada, and there's, a lot of metabolic illness, which is why something like a flu or an infection that's being spread is going to hurt so many of these people. So you already have low testosterone, you already have a lot of inflammation, it's like when I lived in the Southwest, there would be forest fires. Forest fires in the West are a huge deal. And you have different forests that are more vulnerable to forest fires because there hasn't been regular maintenance of that forest and upkeep. So same thing with humans. If we don't take care of ourselves and something comes along, we're going to be very susceptible to that thing. And I'm not shaming anybody who has chronic illness or who is, overweight or has any of these diagnoses. It's a matter of realizing, okay, I do have the power to change this, and I'm going to ask for help, and I'm going to go to the people who can help me do this. And it's going to take time. It's going to take effort. You're not always going to be perfect. You're still going to make mistakes. You're still going to probably eat a hamburger and French fries and drink a soda. And maybe if you're a guy, you drink too much beer or something, and figuring out how you're going to reset those behaviors and figuring out what's behind them. There could be a trauma from your childhood or a physical trauma that makes you crave sugar, or it makes you drink a 6-pack of beer every day because you haven't unraveled and healed that trauma. So there's a lot of layers to this stuff, and we don't have time to get into all the minutia, but I think people realizing hey, I'm going to ask for help. I realize that the way I've been living and the way that I am is not healthy, and I feel horrible, and I want to feel better, and getting healthy, and realizing that when you start doing that, you need to find other people that are healthy in your community and grab onto them as your lifeline, because the people who are around you who are unhealthy as you and as healthy as you are gonna start to get mad at you for getting healthy. So because
that's the first step.
Yeah.
Get rid of the friends that are bringing you down. The crabs in a bucket. They don't want you to get out of that bucket. I'm going to bring you down. Go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah, exactly. So don't be surprised. And it could be family members. It could be people that used to be your best friends. and they're going out every weekend for brunch and having mimosas, or they're, drinking a 6-pack of beer every night, watching sports, not being active, eating junk food and living that life. And you may realize, hey, I want more out of my life, or maybe you have kids or they have kids and you have grandkids. So you want to be around for the big events of their life, and where you're headed is not going to let you be around to see that. So finding like that motivating factor, finding like your why, as Simon Sinek says, finding why would you even want to look at your testosterone level as a guy? Why would you even want to unravel, like, hey, have I been exposed to mold? I've been working construction my whole life. You probably have. Why would you want to unravel these kind of root causes that we're talking about, and figuring out what that is? That could be, hey, I need to be here for my family. I'm the breadwinner. I need to continue to work until I'm 75 years old. I can't retire at 65 right now because I have to, maintain this certain lifestyle for my family. Those can be your why. And then the what is, okay, let's look at your hormones. Let's and get you feeling the best you can feel. And that's essentially what needs to happen for a lot of people. And also realizing, hey, you're 1 out of 10 people. If you become healthy, you're 1 in 10 or less in your community. Most people will not even ever wake up and say, hey, I don't feel healthy. This isn't normal. I need to do something about it. Or this isn't optimal, because there's no such thing as normal. I want to feel the best I can feel. Our bodies are meant to heal. Our bodies are meant to be healthy. And we're not meant to be exposed to all these toxins. And we're not meant to eat these foods that I call fake foods, like, fast food and stuff like that. They've just made it very, the Frankenfoods. They made it affordable, but all that stuff is laden with toxins. It's not real. Start by eating real food. If you have to, grow it. If people are talking about, oh, well, food prices are going up, gas prices are going up, well, grow your own food. Figure out where the butcher shop is, figure out where the nearest ranch is, and buy a quarter cow and split the other quarter with the neighbor, friend, or your other family members who live nearby. And there's ways of making this stuff affordable. You don't have to go to somewhere like Whole Foods and spend your whole life savings buying organic food. And a lot of organic food that's sold in grocery stores are baked goods, and they're just junk, organic, gluten-free foods.
That's the thing. We're being tricked into thinking, like, when talking about a 6-pack of beer, that 6-pack of beer might have more glyphosate in it than the actual lawn that you're stepping on. So we got to stop and think. And before we go into solutions, because, I do want to talk about people that have had prostate cancer and now the doctor refuses to give them testosterone. So I want to talk to you about that. But before we go there, I just want to encourage you. I hope that all of you have checked out whenyouneedafriend.com. Our class is being broadcast live at whenyouneedafriend.com. When you go there, scroll down, it says watch live. You can watch live. That way, if we're ever censored all the way and we get deleted from Facebook or YouTube, you know where to find us now. So go to whenyouneedafriend.com. Please subscribe while you're there. And also like and follow me on all social media, especially BitChute and Odyssey, that we are not being censored on. So please do that and let your friends know to do it as well. Please check out my sponsor, Dr. Jennifer Gramuth, and the pharmacy in Merritt Island. If you don't want to take a medication, compounding is a huge thing now. They've limited compounders to be sterile, and so now compounding is a totally different game. So the pharmacy in Merritt Island has been a strong supporter of the classroom. Please support them. Let them know that you heard about them in the classroom. And then you can go to the Shop Now bag. We have workshops. We have the Body Code, which focuses on toxins and emotions. And so we're hosting the Body Code with Dr. Bradley Nelson, and we're changing the date. So stay tuned. We're changing the date on that one. And there's other workshops that you can do to kind of figure out, why do you do the drinking? Why, the mindset, and how you can control that. So go to the Shop Now bag and check out all the products that we have, especially beauty product women. Beauty products, Keep Me Safe Organics. The products here are no chemicals, all organic, and it doesn't have anything that is synthetic. So check it out. You get 10% off when you enter Lily 10. And lastly, you can become a student in the classroom, whether it's $1 or $1,000 a month. Please help, because it's costing more and more and more to do this program, and we need the generosity of the people. Today we have Dr. Sam Madeira, ND, and you can find him at apollohealthclinic.com. And we're talking about men's hormones. So thank you so much for coming on today. I didn't ask you if you have any extra time we normally have the teacher's pet corner in the classroom. These are people who have questions that I can answer, maybe 15 minutes after 1 o'clock. Do you have that time? Perfect.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect. Yeah, we didn't have time to talk beforehand, so I got to ask you live. I'm putting you on the spot now. Okay,
Yeah.
So before we go, because we only have about 5 minutes in the program, and then we'll go into the teacher's pet corner and answer all your questions. Make sure you type in a Q, write your questions down, and we'll read it on the air. So people that have had, just like women who have had cancer, breast cancer, the doctors refuse to give them any kind of estrogen, which we know already that there are some estrogens that don't affect cancer. What about men with testosterone? Is there a similarity that they can still, even if they have prostate cancer, have their testosterone increased?
Yeah. So in Europe, they're doing research, and they're doing research with men who have had prostate cancer or have prostate cancer with testosterone therapy. And they're showing that it's improving their quality of life. And it's in the essence of how they're being treated there. It's not really interfering with their treatment of prostate cancer. So there's basically going back to this one researcher in the 1940s and 60s who won a Nobel Prize in medicine. I believe his name was Huggins. You can look him up.
Huggins.
Hal Huggins? I forget his first name, but he did research on dogs and humans who had prostate cancer via castration. And his whole thesis and basically outcome of that research was, hey, they had better outcomes and less prostate cancer. And then if they already had prostate cancer, less severe prostate cancer. So since basically the 40s and 60s is that testosterone causes cancer. So testosterone doesn't cause cancer, just like oxygen in your home doesn't cause a house fire. That's just ridiculous. Obviously, you need the oxygen to be there, but you need a lot of other things to be there too, like insulin resistance, like diabetes, like metabolic syndrome, like all this inflammation and stuff that we've already talked about, toxin exposure. And then there's conversion of testosterone to both estrogens, plural, and there's conversion of testosterone to dihydrotestosterone. So in Europe, you can prescribe straight dihydrotestosterone and it won't get converted to testosterone. To estrogen. So there's DHT, dihydrotestosterone prescriptions in Europe that men can get. We can't get those. We don't have those in the US at this time. It would be great if we did. I think that would be a potentially great treatment for some men who have had prostate cancer. What happens with a lot of men who go through treatment for prostate cancer is the medication that they use, Lupron, is basically kills their testosterone. So it's essentially a castration chemically of their testosterone level. And the main issue, it's a little bit more complicated. There's a great book called The New Testosterone Treatment by a PhD, Friedman. I believe he's out of Chicago, and he has a website and interviews online. You can look up Dr. Friedman, PhD, F-R-I-E-D.
David Friedman?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
He's been in the classroom. We'll have to get him back on this one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Great book, The New Testosterone Treatments. So essentially the idea is that you decrease overconversion to either DHT or the estrogens, and there's different estrogen receptors. There's basically one great estrogen receptor and one not so great estrogen receptor. And those estrogens binding there with things like inflammation, insulin resistance, can cause prostate cancer. So basically being as healthy as you can be, decreasing the toxins, and getting on testosterone therapy sooner than later, you're going to decrease your chances of having issues there.
Very good.
Prostate cancer.
Very good. And we're going to continue our conversation in the Teacher's Pet Corner. So ask your questions, type in a queue. For those of you who are listening on podcast, just know there's an extensive podcast and you can listen to it on my social media. Dr. Madeira, thank you so much for joining us for this class. And I am looking forward to asking you more questions in part 2 here. Thank you. And please remember, we'll be right here waiting for you worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. This is Lillian McDermott and Dr. Sam Madeira wishing you love, peace, joy, and unexpected abundance. Make it the best day ever.
The Lillian McDermott radio show are intended for the individual callers and guests of the program and are presented to our wider audience solely for general educational purposes. Please act responsibly and consult personally with your own medical, psychological, or nutritional expert before taking any steps to improve your life.
Great conversation. I've got to check in with David. He has been he's the one that wrote Food. What was the name of his book? Food something, and it did really well. And so we gotta get him on. So with women, so we've had some questions about women and the testosterone for women. Would you like to elaborate a little bit more on what is normal in the sense that when you say what feels good and what gives you optimal life? So let's talk a little bit about female testosterone. Is this something that we need to look for?
Yeah, I think women should be getting their testosterone levels checked either in a urine test that they're doing, either a 24-hour urine or a 4-time collection in a 24-hour period on reagent strips, or in their blood free and total testosterone. Oftentimes, young women in their 30s and early 40s have low normal testosterone, and they have issues with body composition. So they may just not be able to gain lean muscle mass. So, and they may have low libido. That can be caused by a lot of things, but definitely when we're looking at something like low libido for men and women, you want to look at testosterone. The FDA is not really keen on women being on testosterone replacement therapy. Basically, all of us men and women have different ratios in our body of testosterone, progesterone, and estrogens. And women, to be optimal, need a different ratio of their estrogen to progesterone, depending on what decade of their life they're in. And then they need a certain amount of testosterone. So most of the people I see they're not above the 50th percentile mark. They're not even above the halfway mark. So they're in the bottom.
And what is the normal for women for testosterone? And when I say normal, these are the normal of sick people, right? The normal sick people. So what would be considered normal? A number that would be considered normal? Because I'm reading here a woman that says that her name is Jennifer. She goes, I'm a woman and I like my total testosterone to be 250 to 300. I think that's a little high. Yeah, but I could be wrong. And between 4 and 7 for the free.
Yeah, so for free testosterone, a 4 or 5 or 7 would be okay, as long as they don't have like acne and stuff on testosterone therapy, if that's what we're talking about doing. Basically, there's different lab ranges for different labs because they're taking like 1 to 2 standard deviations from the mean of the population that is getting their blood tested at that lab. So in the US, we have Quest Diagnostics and LabCorp, which are the 2 biggest conventional blood testing companies. And basically, if you're getting your blood tested there, yes, you are being compared to very sick people. And they consider 0 free testosterone normal in normal range for women. So of basically any age. So if you're, over 25 or 20 years old, 0 is considered normal free testosterone for women, which to me is that's crazy. Like that any hormone would be okay at 0. You definitely don't want 0. So the total testosterone typically goes up to about 45 or 50 on the lab test. And I like to see it, between that 40 and 50. Not below 40. So if someone's below 40, and I think that's nanograms per deciliter whole blood. So if she's talking about picograms per milliliter, you just need to chop off a 0 here. So,
Okay.
400 picograms per milliliter may be okay, but that's that's 40 nanograms per deciliter total testosterone, free testosterone, 5, 6, 7. If you're not getting side effects to the testosterone therapy. But that's not conventional medicine. So you can't go to a MD OB-GYN and say, hey, I want testosterone therapy, because that's not like a conventional treatment that those types of physicians do. That's not like approved. It's not FDA approved. So you're going to have to go outside the conventional medicine community for a lot of things that I'm talking about, but especially for that.
Yeah. And what about men? Again, normal in the sense that you're saying, and a LabCorp, or is what, 0 to what? Or
Yes. So
what is
now
there for men?
the range for men at most LabCorps is around 160 to around 900. I think 869 now is quote unquote the normal range. They released a research article in 2017 and a white paper from LabCorp, and you can Google it and see it. It's like a 1-page, about 8 paragraphs or less, and they just talk about, based on the research, hey, based on non-obese males age 19 to 39, we decided that our new lab range is, instead of 250 to 1250, or 350, excuse me, to 1250, which is what it was before 2017. Now we're going to move it down to about 169 to 800 or 900. So that's where they moved it down about 20 to 30%, which actually corresponds to that drop in that NHANES research that I'm talking about. So that is from the population studies, normal testosterone, and you would be high if you had optimal testosterone on that range. So you want to be
Wow.
above ideally you want to be in 900 and all those things and feeling your best. But
what's a good range in your in your research and your clinical studies that you have, your anecdotal studies? What would you consider the normal range for your patients that come to see you?
yeah, I really like it when people are between that 800 to 1200 total testosterone. I think that's like a sweet spot for a lot of people, and a lot of people feel fine at 800, 900 total testosterone. And the free testosterone as close to 30 nanograms per deciliter as possible. Some people feel fine at 20. Some people feel really good at 30 or 35. Once you get up above 35, it's too much. So some
Okay.
people genetically have an androgen receptor deficit. So there's a genetic test that does a lot of other genetic tests that has an androgen receptor test in it. And anybody can do this test with saliva. It's out of a company in Canada called the DNA Company. And you get the kit, and it takes them about 4 months to get you a result. And once you have the results, you never have to do the test again. I think it's $450 US roughly.
Wow.
But the DNAcompany.com, and they test a lot of other things for cardiovascular health and cognition and your ability for executive functioning, what foods to eat. And it's a very long report to read through. And then you can do a consult with them, or you can do a consult with a doctor like myself. So I take about 2 separate 1-hour visits to go over this test result with patients. And then we just focus on key parts. But they have an androgen receptor test in there. And a lot of people with low testosterone actually have issues with their androgen receptor too. So you want to optimize your ability to upregulate your androgen receptors, because even if you're on testosterone therapy and your androgen receptors are really low, you're still not going to feel as good as you can feel on testosterone therapy. Something's going to be off. So getting that optimized, getting your mitochondria optimized is also going to help with any hormone replacement therapy, or even if you're not on hormone replacement therapy. So these are, like key nutrients to look at, key things to look at. And so I think that's where the future hopefully will go, would be, hey, let's have a more affordable androgen receptor test, just like checking somebody's blood. Let's just check your androgen receptor um, ability or potential of upregulation. And let's also look at your hormone levels throughout the day. Let's look at all these things and then have somebody invent a testosterone medication that is like just giving them a microdose of testosterone throughout the day instead of what we now have, pellets, injections, creams, troches. All of those things I think are good depending on the person who needs them. I personally am not a big pellet fan unless you're in active duty military or a firefighter fighting forest fires all summer and you can't, figure out how to do an injection or a cream, or you're hunting in Alaska for 6 months out of the year. Sure, that person probably needs a pellet, but everybody else should probably do a cream or injections, one or the other.
So you prefer the cream, and so compounding is really important to the
Yes.
at that moment. I've heard doctors say in the classroom that when you use a cream and you go near another person or you touch that other person, it could transfer onto the other person. How true is that?
Yeah. So I like injections 2 to 3 times a week. I prefer that to cream for most people. Some people just do a lot better with creams and applying it to the scrotum specifically for men. And Dr. Jonathan Wright, MD, he's pretty
Oh, him
famous
too.
doctor in hormone replacement
Yeah.
therapy. He recommends applying like DHEA creams and testosterone creams to the part of that, to the anal mucosa, so to your butt, basically. Um, and you're less likely to have
Through the
transfer.
rectum?
Yeah, to the rectal mucosa,
Okay.
not as a suppository, but just as a cream, like
Okay.
on the outer surface. Because the blood vessels are closer to the surface there, you're going to absorb it better. If you're applying creams, I'm not a big fan of applying creams to your arms, to your legs and stuff like that. Especially, I don't recommend creams for people of small children.
So you,
And
so
if
you agree that it could be transferred to the other person.
Yeah, and usually it's not transferred if it's being rubbed in correctly and you're waiting, 2 hours before like having sexual activity or something like
Hmm.
that, at least
Hmm.
2 hours. A lot of people claim there's still a lot of transference. I think those people are just not rubbing in the cream correctly. If that's really a big deal for somebody, you should just switch to injections and figure out how to work around injection phobia. It's really not as scary as I think most people make it out to be. So
Yeah.
I prefer, for probably 80% of the people I work with, some men really like the cream. They just do better on the cream. You have to typically dose it high potency, so 100 milligrams cream twice a day, so morning and afternoon, or at least 100 milligrams in the morning, depending on the person. So and make it really potent in that like half milligram, you're getting 100 milligrams. So it's it can work if they apply it correctly and they're getting the right potency. But
Okay.
it's either cream or injections. That's what my patients are going to get. I don't do the pellet insertion procedure. It is a minor surgery. You can get infections. Your body can reject and push out the pellets. There's, I
And if
think,
they give you too much, you're stuck with it for a while.
exactly. It's lock and load. So there's
Yeah.
no way to decrease your dose at all. If
Hmm.
anything, and I've had female patients get testosterone pellets and their testosterone's higher than a man should be,
Hmm.
and they're all screwed
Oh,
up for about a year. I've had
uh,
men come to me and their whole endocrine systems completely crashed because they were given pellet therapy and it was done wrong. And it's really hard to kind of like unless you're just amazing with pellet therapy, and get that dose dialed in the first time around. Usually it's a low dose if they're doing it right, and then they would give you a cream or injection on top of it if your labs came back. That's the other thing. People are not checking labs frequently enough, maybe once or twice a year in a whole year of testosterone therapy. You should at least be getting your hematocrit and hemoglobin and red blood cell count checked every 3 months with your testosterone. and your free testosterone and sex hormone binding globulin. So those labs are pretty affordable. Most people can afford those either out of pocket or insurance will pay for some of them, depending on your insurance plan. And that should be every roughly 12 to 16 weeks for the
Mm-hmm.
first year. So, and then after that, if things are going well, also there's a huge debate about blood donation. I think most men, even, if you're mostly healthy and you don't have a condition that prohibits you from donating blood, talk to your doctor first. But most men in general should be donating blood twice a year, if you don't have something that's contraindicated for you to do that. So that's how women detoxify through menstruation. Obviously, men don't menstruate. Apparently, that's now a debate, but biologically, men do not menstruate. So basically,
well, nowadays some people don't know the difference between a man and a woman, and I think that is really causing a lot of these issues. If men have so much estrogen in their body and very little testosterone, I could see why a man would want to become a woman, and a woman, if they have too much testosterone, would want to become a man. And so we've got to really, take care of our own bodies and bring it back to basics. So with that in mind, when you're looking at someone who maybe isn't producing enough, a man that's not producing enough testosterone, and let's say they have other factors, maybe they're morbidly obese, maybe they have diabetes, sleep apnea, or something that been keeping them from their sleep. So would you say that pelleting or creams is not their first line of defense? Do they take care of the underlying conditions first? What is your opinion on that?
Well, if someone has a sleep disorder or a sleep disruption, usually you ask them, how is your sleep? How do you feel when you wake up? Are you tired during the day? Do you have a significant other in bed with you saying that you're snoring? Do you wake up feeling like you can't breathe sometimes? Are you sleepy throughout the day with brain fog? That person needs to go right away and get a sleep study, yesterday. I've had patients that have had these symptoms for 20 years and they come and see me and they say, yeah, I've had, my brother on a camping trip, or this person told me a long time ago that I'm not breathing well in my sleep, or I'm snoring really bad. Sleep apnea can kill people. So you want to go and get a CPAP machine. You want to get that treatment right away. I've seen men have that CPAP and use it. There's a compliance issue, I know, because we still need to work out this technology and make it a lot more user friendly, but you need to use that CPAP machine before you ever touch testosterone, ideally. Because if someone has really bad sleep apnea and they get on testosterone therapy, it will make it worse. And that's a huge contraindication for getting on testosterone therapy with severe sleep apnea. If they have mild sleep apnea, their sleep apnea may get mildly worse, but it's not going to send them over the moon. They still should get a sleep study within, the first month or 3 of testosterone therapy. So those things can actually make you not a candidate for testosterone therapy even after you get the CPAP, because I've seen men increase their total testosterone 500 points with a CPAP machine, using it every night and making sure they're getting enough sleep. They still could have other symptoms, vascular causing function. And I think a lot of people, there's this disconnect, like, okay, well, I have, this patient may have erectile dysfunction, but they don't realize their whole body, their whole vascular system has issues. So you need to go to a cardiologist and get checked out for those things. Basically, vascular disease could be cardiovascular. So you could have heart disease. You could have issues with your heart where you actually need to get a stress test. You need to get an EKG, maybe an echocardiogram, maybe a carotid, a coronary calcium score. So you need to get you can get your carotid arteries, carotid intima media tests. So CIMT, and a coronary calcium score as well. So all those things can be done by a conventional MD cardiologist, but just taking Viagra and not getting your heart checked out for beyond an EKG is probably doing that person a disservice, and frankly isn't very good medicine. So these our bodies, it's kind of, I know it's obvious, but it's not obvious at the same time. Everything's connected. So if the pipes aren't working downstairs, they're probably not, probably have some vascular illness with the blood vessels going to and from your head and the coronary arteries in your heart. Anywhere that there's a bifurcation, there can be buildup of plaques. So you could have other issues. And basically, the acronym that I use is if someone has severe erectile dysfunction is early death. So ED equals early death. And there's a huge issue with vascular disease with men, and cardiovascular disease being the number one killer of both men and women.
Wow.
So if you have had this erectile dysfunction issue for a while and you're not getting checked out for other things beyond your cholesterol, which we actually need cholesterol, and cholesterol is an issue, you need to get those other tests I mentioned. So coronary calcium score, CIMT, most likely, and probably at least an EKG, if not a cardiac stress test.
Very good.
And there's also, we could go into more detail, but there's more fractionated lipids, get an NMR, capital NMR test in your blood from a doctor, and looking at other inflammation markers beyond C-reactive protein and stuff like that. But you can get these fractionated lipid tests done and genetic tests. If you've known or you have a first degree family member that has had a heart attack at a young age or a stroke at a young age, you probably already have genetics that predispose you. Even if you're the healthiest person you still could have genetics, because genetics are 20% of cardiovascular disease, cardiovascular events. The rest, that 80% of that is your lifestyle. So when we talk about lifestyle, it's as important or 1,000% more important for someone with those genetics. So that person can't be as relaxed with their diet. That person really needs to focus on those things. And that goes back to testosterone. So
no, this is really, what about if somebody just snores? Not sleep apnea, they just snore.
Yeah, so there's all this stuff with like holistic dentists on social media, and you want to find either a holistic dentist or maybe a holistic ENT doctor to evaluate your throat and your mouth. You may need a certain type of device to like readjust the spacing of your teeth and your mouth and the way things are lining up, and also do a true ENT evaluation of your nose. So you may have issues with your sinuses, you may have mold in your sinuses colonized in there, and you need to get with a doctor who knows how to deal with that. You could have nasal polyps, which can be made worse by inflammation in your body and things like mold, etc. So you need to get a full evaluation of basically your whole airway, not just a sleep apnea test and call it good. So you need to get your nose, your sinuses, and your mouth evaluated. You may have too narrow of an airway, and you need to find out either a holistic dentist or a really good ENT doctor to look at those things.
Great information. I think it's wonderful that you're sharing this extra, especially for the people in the teacher's pet corner, because they are the ones that get this extra information. If somebody is listening to you and they go, I really would like to go to you. I know that you do telemedicine as well, right?
Yes. Yep. We have telemedicine options. So you can go to our website, apollohealthclinic.com. And in the upper right-hand corner, it says apply to be a patient, and click that button, fill out the application. And then we'll send you an email or give you a call and get you scheduled for a free discovery call with our staff that will talk to you and make sure you're a good fit and let you know how things work and how things work at the clinic and the cost and everything before you get started.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being, I just got back from vacation, and one of my grandkids gave me a little cold. And so I think I've exceeded my time of talking this today, but I'm really grateful to you for this information. I'd love to learn more. This is just the beginning. We're just dipping our toe in this topic because there's a lot of things we don't know. But the problem is our doctors don't either. And
Mhm.
we have to become our own MD, our own medical detective, our own advocate. We bring this information to our doctors so that we can co-learn with them. And that is so important, that you can bring this information to your doctor or send this video to your doctor and they go, wow, some things I did know, some things I didn't know. Let's figure this out again. Let's go this route again. So thank you so much, Dr. Madeira, for coming into the classroom today and sharing your knowledge.
Thank you for having me.
And oh, you're welcome. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. We will see you tomorrow. Thank you for sticking around with the Teacher's Pet Corner, and we'll see you